Mile high, hello everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is the man, the myth, and the legend. He is your Denver Broncos insider, Mile High Huddle's senior draft analyst, Erick Trickel. Erick, what's going on, man?
It's going good, and I actually find it funny that you did introduce me as the man, the myth, the legend, because earlier this week I recorded with Nick, and I'm pretty sure he did the same kind of intro. And I actually didn't type it out. He also added the resident genius to the intro for me because I actually typed that into our outline for it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he did the man, the myth, the legend. So I just find that funny. Coincidental.
Yeah, a little coincidental, but I mean, I thought about putting that in there earlier all day today. I didn't get a chance to check out the Building the Broncos piece yet, so I just wanted to kind of loosen it up a little bit when we first get started on something like this today. I mean, it's been a long day, and I'm kind of tired, so we're gonna kind of force our way through this for just a little bit, but. Guys, on today's episode of Dove Valley Deep Divers, we're going to take a very in-depth look at the play of the Broncos left tackle, Garett Bolles. We're going to discuss, just the technique aspect of his game, his hand placement, his footwork. We're going to look at the holding penalties and how he can improve where his hands, his feet, and just his overall technique to eliminate those penalties. Then we're going to take a look at some guys from the draft this year as far as like potential replacement options, and also in the free agent pool as well. And then shortly after that, we'll get into the Green Bay Packers game. So here we go, guys.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, Erick. Today we're going to discuss Garett Bolles and the issues that he has had playing the left tackle position, and obviously the holds is the big thing that everyone's up in arms about right now. And he did have 4 holding penalties against the Chicago Bears. All of them, I believe, all of them were in the second quarter. There might have been one at the beginning of the third quarter. I can't remember exactly, but 4 holds. That's not very good, obviously. But there was probably 6 or 7 plays in a row there that Garett Bolles could have gotten called for holding on every single one of them, not just like all game. I'm talking straight in a row. So, Erick, break it down for us really quick. What's the biggest issue that you see with Garett Bolles and his technique right now?
Well, the biggest issue is that he doesn't keep his hands up ready to punch. That immediately puts him behind. If you're not having your hands up, and we saw this against Khalil Mack multiple times against the Bears. When he goes to bring his hands up to deliver his punch, it's just so easy to swipe out of the way. You got to keep them up, and you got to hit them first if you're an offensive lineman. I mean, if you're dropping into your pass protection and they're coming at you, yes, you have to be a little bit patient with it, but you got to time it. You got to get your hands out first. That's the biggest issue with Garett Bolles. His hands are constantly down at his side. He doesn't keep them up, doesn't keep them ready, and when you look at and watch better left tackles play, not even elite guys, even though elite guys do this, they keep their hands up at the ready. Being put from behind, allowing them to take his outside shoulder, just goes and leads to him to holding. And it makes me wonder, as John Elway, as Vic Fangio, as multiple other people within the Broncos organization have mentioned, it makes me wonder if he actually knows what holding is, because he keeps making these same mistakes. It's very correctable, but my question is, will he be able to correct it? He's had 14 accepted holding calls in the last 2 years. That is the most in the NFL in that time frame.
By far.
His first 2 years. So it isn't acceptable. When we see him keep his hands up, he actually plays really well. Like, it's light and day. I mean, penalties are still an issue. False starts, holding, he still gets hit with them. But when he keeps his hands up, his pressure rate plummets. To close out the 2018 season, he allowed 2.7% pressure rate. It was one of the best in the NFL for weeks 10 through 17, which is when that was allowed. Beforehand, it was about middle of the pack with I think 4% right there, meaning about 2%, just under 3% of his plays, he was allowing a pressure. That's actually pretty good. And he actually looked a lot better in the running game, and he showed potential of him being a quality left tackle. It's why so many people were hyped up that, hey, we got Mike Munchak. He's going to be able to help fix Garett Bolles and make him something and make him great. We just haven't seen it. And against the Bears, by my count, I'm not sure how accurate this is because I did this count before all 22 film was available on Game Pass, but from my count, from how it looked, he only allowed 6 pressures. And for error, I'll be willing to give up saying that he gave up 10. I know it wasn't much more than that, but the holds really killed his game because outside of that, he actually was solid. Which, it's not the best to do that because the holds are part of his game. But it's like Isaac Yiadom from the game against the Oakland Raiders. People want to kill him because of that first half that he had, basically that first drive where he allowed multiple catches. But he ended that game on a strong level, on a strong note. He showed the potential. They made the adjustments that can help him. And they did something similar with Garett Bolles. There's still potential there. They've definitely got to get it down. And if not, he's going to be replaced after this year. Can't keep holding. He's got to learn what it is. He's got to learn how to fix it. And the question is he willing to? And does he have the capacity to improve and cut back on those? Haven't been seen it yet. Haven't heard positive things about that involving him. So only time will tell.
Right. And, there was an interesting interview with him after the game, and he did look like he was pretty beaten up about it and was just, it seemed like he was so confused as what the holding penalties were, like why he was getting them called against him. And to me, it's just, you have to understand that you cannot keep your hands on the outside of the framework of the defender you're trying to block. He's getting his hands, so his hands when he starts the rep are down by his waist. They're not up by his shoulders, and they're not ready to fire as soon as the opportunity presents itself. So what he's doing is he has to raise his hands up, and he brings them outside, and he gets underneath the outside of the shoulder pad, up by where the numbers are at. He's pushing that up, and he's getting on the outside of the framework. You cannot do that, because when you hold on to that, then you're getting jersey to pull, and the referees are going to see that. They're going to throw that penalty every single time. And then the one that was the most egregious, and I'm like, how can you not know this is holding? And even Mark Schlereth on the game broadcast, he's like, if you're going to tackle people, we'll just put you to the defensive side of the football because that's where you're going to be the best suited for this Denver Broncos team. So, he got his left hand up on the outside, his right hand up underneath the armpit of the defender. I can't remember who it was. And he just walked him straight backwards and laid right on top of him. It was atrocious. You cannot do that at this level and get away with it. And that he's like, they're just going off of my reputation. Well, you have a reputation of holding because you hold every single play. Like I said, 6-7 plays in a row, you could have been called for holding. So, and that's just in the running game. I'm not even talking specifically to the passing game. In the passing game, his footwork is lazy. It's sloppy at times. He does have enough athleticism to kind of overcome that, but he's getting his feet perpendicular to the line of scrimmage very quickly, and he's opening up his shoulders. He's letting the outside of his edge and opening up the arc, and all he's doing is kind of mirroring and pushing that up away. But when he's not getting a good punch and getting a good initial jab with his right hand on the left shoulder of his defender, now he has to reach up on the outside. He's getting that hand up by the numbers again, up inside the horse collar kind of area as well, and then he's just dragging guys down to the ground. And it's like, if you kick slide, keep your shoulders square to the line of scrimmage, get your good kick slide, keep your hands at the ready, and dictate the rep as soon as you get a chance to dictate, this is where we're going to go, and this is how I'm going to block you, and be physical about it, because you're not seeing that with him right now. He's catching guys, he's backpedaling, turning his shoulders, he's backpedaling back into Joe Flacco's lap, or even Trevor Siemian's lap from the last couple of years. So you've got to figure that out, and you've got to get your footwork figured out and create a basis for you to have success when you're pass protecting. Now, another issue that I see with him is once he actually does initiate contact and he has his hands where they're supposed to be, his feet stop. And then he doesn't get back and doesn't hand fight enough to get back to where he is having success and mirroring his defender. So there's a lot of issues to his game, but they're all very coachable. And with Mike Munchak, it just doesn't seem like Garett Bolles is willing to accept the coaching that Mike Munchak has given him. Because look at what he did with Alejandro Villanueva up in Pittsburgh. He turned an undrafted free agent out of Army. I think it was Army. Anyways, he takes a former military academy player, undrafted, and turns him into a top at least 7 left tackle in the game. Where is the improvement with Garett Bolles?
Yeah, and people want to sit there and point out that, it's only been X amount of time. He hasn't had a full year with him. He hasn't, and that is one reason why I don't think that Denver will fully give up on him after this season. I think they will continue to work with him and give him another year with Mike Munchak, just seeing if potentially they can salvage the first round pick. I don't think they'll pick up the fifth year option. That should be obvious, but I don't think they're going to cut him. I think they'll sit there and continue working with him because at the very least he might be able to become a solid depth piece. And also, to be fair a little bit with the holding calls on Garett Bolles, one or two of them were pretty ticky-tacky, but yes. The issue with that is that there were a couple that weren't called that were more clearly holds than the two ticky-tacky ones, so it kind of balances out. But it's just, he's got to get it down. I mean, as you said, there's so many issues with it that leads to holding. But it all comes down to is, does he actually know what holding is? I question that, and even though he hasn't had a full year with Mike Munchak, he should be showing better than he is. Having 2 years in the NFL already, he should know what holding is. He should know that he has this reputation because of those 14 accepted holding calls, and since he was brought into the NFL, since he was drafted, it's been like almost 30 total holding calls, which is far and away the highest in the NFL. I think the next closest I saw it was at like 19 total, accepted and unaccepted. So, it's mind-boggling that he doesn't understand why he has this reputation. And I will say this too, is that he made this comment about how the refs are looking for it and everything like that because of the reputation, which of course they're going to look for it. That is very common with the NFL. But again, to be fair to him, the refs this year have been throwing holding calls on just about everything, and it's getting way out of hand. Like that game last night when we're recording this, that game last night against the Titans and the Jaguars, I didn't watch much of it, but what I watched, I turned it off because of how many holding calls they were. It's getting stupid, and the NFL needs to cut back on it just a little bit.
Yeah, Tom Brady actually said something about that too. He said he quit watching the game because of all the penalties. I mean, there have been a lot of holding penalties this year. It's kind of rough, but we need to kind of look forward though. I mean, like you said, probably not going to give the fifth-year option to Garett Bolles, so that's going to leave a hole open up at that left tackle side if the Broncos don't keep him around as far as like a depth piece. There definitely needs to be some kind of an answer made, and this year in the NFL draft, I mean, there's a couple of pretty good options. I don't know with John Elway's history for drafting offensive tackles if that's probably the best way to go. But Eric, you got kind of a list here that you've got just some names that we need to kind of think about and just put a bug in our ears about some of the better offensive tackle prospects that are coming up. So who you got, man? Man,
this year I absolutely love the tackle class. It is so strong. You have Tristan Wirfs and Andrew Thompson out of Iowa and Georgia, respectively. Those are your top two guys. Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa, he can play 4 of the 5 spots on the offensive line, center being the only one he can't. I love his technique. He's definitely needs to show a little bit more improvement as a run blocker, but his pass protection is really sound, really solid. Technique is solid. Andrew Thomas, he probably has the best technique of the bunch, but there's a lot of inconsistencies with his game. Those are definitely top 2 guys, and if Denver is picking in the top 8, they should do whatever they can to make sure they land one of those guys. Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama is a guy who I think can really rise up in this draft. He's a guy who was playing guard last year because they had Jonah Williams at left tackle, and he was the top tackle prospect that came out, but when he came out of high school. So now he gets to play left tackle, and so far he's looked great there. So he could definitely be a riser. There's still some concerns about it because there's such a small sample size of him at left tackle, but the early returns have been great. Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. This is a guy that I like playing either tackle spots. He could be a depth guy, a depth swing tackle if he isn't able to be a starter, but I think that he's got good potential to be a starter. Prince Tega Wanogho out of Auburn. This is a guy that's very athletic, very raw, very similar to Garett Bolles when he came out. If they were willing to take a guy probably in that second round that they want to work with and develop, maybe if they signed a free agent option for a short term, then this is a guy that they could definitely look at bringing in and letting Mike Munchak develop. Lucas Niang, he's a guy who's plenty of power. He's a guy that I think could be a day one starter at right tackle and eventually develop into left tackle. Ezra Cleveland, he's more of a middle, later round guy out of Boise State, going from being the little Broncos to the big Broncos, and he definitely needs a lot of development. So he's not a guy that I'd be looking out to start right away, but he's a guy that I'd be looking to pair with Mike Munchak. And Tristan Wirfs really overshadows him, but Alaric Jackson out of Iowa is another really good tackle prospect. I think that he is more of a I think he's definitely just a tackle. I think that he's probably more of a safer pick than Tristan Wirfs in a way. I think at the very least you have a very solid backup tackle in Jackson. But I like his game. I think you can play him at right tackle or left tackle. I do think that there is still some development needed there with him. But I like what I've seen out of him, and I just love this tackle class in general, man.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for Erick Jackson. He went down with a pretty big knee injury. I think he was a torn ACL, right?
I don't think so. I think he's expected back I think it's expected back next week.
Oh, really? I guess I hadn't seen anything on that.
I know it wasn't serious, and that he was only supposed to miss a few games. And the only reason why I know that is because of talking to our colleague Nick Kendall about it.
Huh. Well, that's on me. I do apologize for that. But Tristan Wirfs actually was the starting right tackle for the Iowa Hawkeyes to begin the year. Erick Jackson was the starting left tackle. Wirfs has now had to move over to left tackle, and he's looked very good there in a little bit of time that I have actually got to see that. But I mean, if the Broncos do want to go the draft option, those are probably the best looking guys to take a look at least for what Erick has to say about it. Now, I went back and I went to look at the free agent class, and there's not a whole lot to work with. The tackle classes, there's not a whole lot to work with there. You've got Andrew Whitworth, who is 38 going on 39, Jason Peters 38 going on 39, Donald Penn 37 going on 38. They're the really big name guys. But then you got a bunch of players coming off the lower 30s, you know. Anthony Costanzo, 32 years old, for the left tackle for the Indianapolis Colts. He's looked really good, and I don't think that the Colts are gonna. I think they're going to keep him. They're not going to let him go. Kelvin Beachum, New York Jets. Brian Bulaga, they're probably going to be set free. Jack Conklin, who has needed a lot of help in Tennessee. He's probably the biggest name out there as far as a right tackle goes, but the issue mostly here is at the left tackle position with Garett Bolles, so that's really what we're breaking down. Then you have Greg Robinson out of Cleveland, who has not looked very good over his time, as he was, I think, the number 2 overall pick in St. Louis when the Rams were still there. But, guys, we still have a lot to talk about, and before we do that, we got to take a quick break. Before we go, I just want to remind you all to head on over to milehighhuddle.com to check out all of our written content on your Denver Broncos. At the Huddle website, you'll get breaking news, analysis, and opinion articles, as well as in-depth film breakdowns of not only the Broncos players, but matchups to watch in an upcoming game, or even our top-notch NFL draft coverage. I do know Nick has a piece right now on Kenny Clark and what the Broncos have to do to stop him as in the Green Bay Packers game, so really go check that out. Also, make sure you take a couple minutes to create your own personalized profile and hit up the comment section to voice your opinions on any topics that you agree or disagree with. It's completely free, it's easy to use, and we, as the staff members, all love to discuss Broncos football with our readers. You can also sit in with us during the live game thread to talk your thoughts on how the team is performing as well. So with that, we got to step away really quick, guys. Sit tight.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, welcome back to Dove Valley Deep Divers, folks. We just got done breaking down Garett Bolles' game tape against the Chicago Bears and talking about his holding penalties, all the fundamental issues. But now it's time to look forward. We're done looking at week 2. We got to move up to week 3 as the Broncos go into Lambeau Field, a place that they have never won, to go face the Green Bay Packers. Eric, what's the biggest key to the game, man?
I think the biggest key is being cautious with Aaron Rodgers. For the defense, anyways. Because you want to keep him in the pocket, because when he gets out of the pocket, just magic happens. He has such a good repertoire with his receivers that they know once he gets out of the pocket, do whatever you can to get open, and he will hit you, and he will get a big gain out of it. But you also want to apply the pressure, and applying the pressure sometimes leaves lanes open for him to escape. So you have to find that balance there, because you want to get him under pressure, and you want to potentially try to make mistakes. Against that Packers defense, this is a tough one because they got Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, 2 really good pass rushers. They have Kenny Clark up the middle. They have a really good secondary, but they do have one weak spot in their linebackers. To move this ball against them, I would expect them to see a lot of trying to get Noah Fant matched up against those linebackers, because Oren Burks isn't expected to play, and B.J. Goodson and Blake Martinez, they're not the best in coverage. B.J. Goodson is definitely exploitable in coverage. Doing whatever they can to get Noah Fant, or even like Deshaun Hamilton or Phillip Lindsay or Royce Freeman matched up against one of them, should benefit the Broncos offense, and that's definitely where you're going to want to be trying to attack to move the ball. Because taking deep shots with Kevin King, Jair Alexander, Adrian Amos, and Darnell Savage, you have to basically be perfect, otherwise they're going to make you pay. Kevin King on Cortland Sutton, that's a great matchup because Kevin King is working his way to a shutdown corner status. He has 1 interception. He's only allowed 3 catches to 7 targets. Gerald Alexander, he's allowed 6 catches to 16 targets. Definitely great play there. Definitely want to try to spread them out a little bit, get those linebackers in coverage and exploit them, because otherwise you're going to struggle a lot.
Yeah, and this Packers defense is full of big plays right now. Full of very, very big plays. Last week against the Minnesota Vikings, they created 4 turnovers, and they had a 5th one on the ground, but Kirk Cousins was able to scoop it up after a strip sack. So they have 6 turnovers already this year. They have 6 sacks as well, and 16 quarterback hits. That defensive line is getting after the passer right now, and with the Broncos' issues that they are having on their offensive line and in pass protection, it's been hit and miss mostly for the majority of the Broncos' first 2 games. So 16 quarterback hits, that's not necessarily something that the Broncos fans are going to want to see. So you're going to have to get that quick passing game over the middle of the field. And really, I think you're going to have to get Noah Fant involved, especially over the middle of the field. And if you can get him lined up against Blake Martinez, I think that's probably going to be the biggest key matchup, the biggest key single matchup of this game for the Broncos if they want to have success offensively. Defensively, yeah, this is something that you're really going to have to watch out for. I don't like the Green Bay Packers wide receivers very much. I mean, there's just not a lot of name power there. Carl and I talked about it earlier this summer as far as the Green Bay Packers receiving corps. And outside of Devontae Adams, who is absolutely spectacular, there's nothing that I will say bad about Devontae Adams. There's really just a lot of nothing there.
Geronimo Allison, Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
With what they ask him to do, there's not many. I don't want to say there's not many better, but what they ask him to do, he does very, very well. And then to be a speedy guy downfield, take the top off, run those posts, run those corners, and keep an eye for Aaron Rodgers to get out of the pocket for the potential big shot. And he does that very well. I really like his game. I liked him coming out. I wanted him in Denver, so it's also a bit personal for me that you're going to sit there and not necessarily trash him, but just say there's not much there when he's there. So
I don't know. That's the only aspect to his game that he does very well, though. I mean, he's not the greatest route runner. He's got okay hands, but I mean, that's it. It's get deep, get open fast. We're going to throw the ball to you deep down the field, and that's it. They don't use him as far as like slant game goes. They don't use him on crossing routes very often. I mean, that is his only game. But so, I mean, I digress. The Packers offense, Aaron is really kind of obviously run through Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Jones has looked really well in his first couple weeks for the Packers. Let me just pull up some stats really quick. So yeah, the Minnesota game, Aaron Jones had 23 rushes for 116 yards. That's 5.04 yards per carry, and he did have a touchdown. He's getting some look in the passing game as well. So that's an offensive weapon that the Broncos need to take advantage of and really kind of keep their eyes on. Eric, I'm going to let you keep going though, because I'm kind of struggling right now.
Aaron Rodgers is definitely a threat. When I was on Building the Broncos, the Scouts Eye preview with Nick Kendall, he definitely talked about it and taking Aaron Jones out of the game, and I definitely agree there. Helping make the Packers offense one-dimensional will help out your defense. And this is a guy that Vic Fangio, he's had to face him, he knows against him, and he even spoke out against him and talking about his skill set and everything. Definitely a really good player. He was another one that I actually liked coming out of it, even though nobody really knew who he was. Coming out of the very small school that he did, I liked him. I liked his skill set, and they definitely got even more out of him than I was expecting. They definitely have other threats around on that receiving game, but they are a very limited unit. I'll give you that. And it all just comes down to Aaron Rodgers. Like, they have 2 great offensive tackles that are 2 of the best in the business, and Leonard Floyd and Khalil Mack, they kind of got some pressures against them, but there's still really good offensive tackles. Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, they're going to have their works cut out for him. Aaron Rodgers, so smart, so athletic, that this is the perfect game to get Todd Davis back. They could definitely use him. They need to get Shelby Harris unleashed and get him going. Justin Simmons, they need to have him play basically a flawless game. The secondary in general needs to basically play a flawless game because of Aaron Rodgers' ability to extend games. I think that this is definitely a make-or-break game for the Denver Broncos. If they don't win this, starting out 0-3 could definitely be a huge detriment to the season. I mean, I don't expect playoffs by any means, but there might be some veterans on this team that start getting upset. I mean, we're seeing players around the NFL demanding trades because they're not happy. If they start getting upset, maybe Emmanuel Sanders starts wanting out. Maybe Chris Harris. Maybe Von Miller. Maybe we just saw it happen with Minka Fitzpatrick. Maybe Bradley Chubb decides he wants out. Not saying it'll happen, but we have to watch it because that is a potential issue if they lose this game. I think it is definitely a must-win for the Denver Broncos. Going 0-3, very, very few teams have come back and made the playoffs after that. Again, I don't expect it to be a playoff season anyways. But I think that this is still a team that could potentially win 7 or 8 games. But if they don't get it going now, I think they would struggle to win 4 games. This game is definitely make or break. This is a team that we've seen them get hit losing streaks before, and they just can't get out of that slump. They get passive. They just allow it to continue. Granted, that was with Vance Joseph. I don't see that happening with Vic Fangio, but you never know. Can't lose this game. Denver has to go in there. They have to finally get their first win against Green Bay when basically they're not at a neutral site like the Super Bowl or in Denver. They've never won in Green Bay or Milwaukee when the Packers would play there. So definitely a win for them. And again, my matchup that I'm very anxious to see for this, I'm going to go with a different one than I did with the Building the Broncos game simply because for some, basically diversity. A little bit. I mean, in that one, in the Building the Broncos, I talked about Fenton Martinez, Sutton and King, Miller, Chubb versus those offensive tackles. I'm going to go with the interior Broncos offensive line against Kenny Clark. Dalton Reisner, he had a rough game against Akeem Nicks and Eddie Goldman. Connor McGovern, he had some struggles, but he actually played a pretty solid game. Ron Leary, they could definitely exploit him because he's not the most quickest guy. So Kenny Clark, he's basically, they need to keep it so Joe Flacco can step up because I don't expect Elijah Wilkinson and Garett Bolles to shut down those offensive tackles. They need to allow him to step up to escape the pressure from there and deliver good balls downfield. Otherwise, this game could get out of hand quickly.
Yeah. Another really quick piece of information that I want to kind of throw out there, and I don't have an exact statistic, but I do know one thing about Aaron Rodgers that the Broncos are going to be able to exploit, and that is specifically the time that he takes to throw the ball. He holds on to the ball an extensive amount of time, and he's averaged 3.4 seconds. Yep, there you go. So 3.04 seconds. That is almost a full second longer than what Mitchell Trubisky was holding the football against the Denver Broncos on most times. I think I saw there was a statistic. He was like 17 or 18 of Mitchell Trubisky's passes came out of his hand in less than 2 seconds.
Yep, 27 of them. 27 passes against the Broncos this year as a whole have been out in under 2 seconds.
Yep, and that's just a ridiculous statistic to me. And that is we talked about it last week as something the Broncos could use against the Bears pass rush to nullify that Bears pass rush was getting the ball out of Joe Flacco's hands quickly. Aaron Rodgers does not do that, and that is something that is why Leonard Floyd and Khalil Mack were able to get some pressures going against Brian Bulaga and David Bakhtiari for the Green Bay Packers. So if the Broncos can get Von Miller and Bradley Chubb getting up the field and having Aaron Rodgers hold on to the football the way that he has been, that is something that the Broncos are going to be able to maybe use. And my bold prediction for this game is that the Broncos are going to walk out of Lambeau Field with at least 4 sacks. I put that on our bold predictions piece, the game picks and analysis that we have with our Mile High Huddle roundtable, and I think that the Broncos are going to walk away with at least 4 sacks against Aaron Rodgers in that offensive line. So that's just another big key matchup for me to watch for the Broncos to walk away with a win. But guys, that's going to do it for us today. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you all once again for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow us on Twitter if you choose by finding me at Sanderson MHH and for Erick at Erick Trickel, spelled ERICKTRICKEL. Also be sure to follow at Mile High Huddle for instant updates on the Denver Broncos. Try to do a really good job of getting all of our written content, the podcast network. You can follow that at Huddle Up Pod as well, so that you guys have instant updates on the Denver Broncos at your fingertips all the time. You guys can also like Mile High Huddle's Facebook page as well. We do kind of the same thing there, getting all of our content, all of our written content, film pieces and stuff like that for you guys to take a look at. And if it weren't for you all, we wouldn't have the opportunity to do what we do best, which is break down your Denver Broncos. So until next time, Broncos country, stay safe and take care. You guys have a great day. Thanks.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.